very much for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South African peace icon Desmond Tutu warns the ruling party that it's failing to fill the shoes of its predecessors. Whilst hailing the gains the country's made in the 2 decades since the end of apartheid, Tutu expresses disappointment in the ANC. Also, supporters of Senegal's former president accuses the current administration of trying to prevent Abdoulaye Wade from returning home from Paris. After 2 years away, his plane is reportedly stuck in Morocco after being refused landing rights in Dakar. And at least 4 people are killed in a car bombing outside a police station in Nairobi. The blast goes off not far from the area known as Little Somalia, which had been targeted by extremists in the past. First up, I will not be voting for the ANC, says Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The South African Nobel Peace Laureate made the declaration on Wednesday as he celebrated 20 years since the end of apartheid. He praised the role the ruling ANC party played in ending white minority rule, but warned that President Jacob Zuma had failed to fill the shoes of the country's first post-apartheid black leader, the late Nelson Mandela. The ANC is expected to win next month's election, but its reputation's taken a knock from corruption allegations and ongoing poverty and social divides. Well, today, Desmond Tutu responded to questions about a growing movement calling for people to spoil their ballots or turn away from the ANC by choosing smaller parties.
You can't call in question the integrity of the people who have proposed this. You can't call in question as it were their struggle credentials. and they are saying, don't vote mindlessly. Don't be voting cattle. Think when you make that cross, and remember that it's going to decide what quality of life you have for the next 5 years.
Well, our correspondent in Cape Town was following the press conference in the city for us. We'll be hearing from her a little later on for a closer look at what Desmond Tutu had to say in the run-up to local elections next month. Well, one of the parties contesting those elections is the Economic Freedom Front, which was set up by Julius Malema, an ex-youth leader for the ANC. Well, he's out of favour and he's accused the South African public broadcaster of discriminating against opposition parties. This after it refused to run an EFF campaign message. Well, the ad calls for people to destroy e-tolls, a controversial new road tolling system. The SABC says it hasn't banned the advert, rather it rejected it because it allegedly incites violence. An ad from the opposition Democratic Alliance was also rejected earlier this month for allegedly launching a personal attack on President Zuma. Well, we're going to be joined now by MC Ferreira, who is in Cape Town. She was following the press conference by Archbishop Desmond Tutu earlier today. MC, today we heard Tutu saying again that he is not going to vote for the ANC, but also that he hasn't chosen to do so lightly.
Well, what we saw today was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, without directly saying so, weighing in on the no-vote debate here ahead of the May 7 elections. Now, the no-vote campaign was launched in Johannesburg a week ago by former ANC leaders. What they've done is they've called on voters to either vote for a smaller party or to deface their ballot papers and send a warning to the ruling party. It's subtly different with Tutu in that he said he will not vote for the ANC, but he's urged voters not to be voting cattle and to consider very carefully who they do vote for. This is, of course, no surprise coming from Tutu. He's a very vocal critic of the ANC in recent years, and particularly of President Jacob Zuma. And of course, a few years ago, when the Dalai Lama was refused entry into South Africa, he said he would pray for the downfall of this government. This time, what he has it against appears to be the Nkandla scandal, as is the case with the leaders of the No Vote campaign, who say it's unconscionable to spend 20 million euros on improving the president's private home. And they're saying that this means that the ANC leadership has lost its path and it's lost the moral high ground, which confirms perceptions really that though the ANC is bound to win this election by another landslide, it faces its toughest re-election campaign in 20 years.
Well, thanks very much. MC Ferreira there for us in Cape Town. In news not long ago, at least 4 people have been killed in a car bombing outside a police station in Nairobi. Officers had stopped the vehicle at traffic lights and were questioning the occupants when the device went off. 2 of those killed were reportedly police. Now, it's still not clear who was behind the attack, which happened in Pangani, next to the Eastleigh district known as Little Somalia. It's been targeted frequently in the past by attacks blamed on Somali Islamist extremist group Al-Shabaab. We'll be hearing from our correspondent in Nairobi in the next hour. So join us for our second African News Bulletin if you can. Elsewhere, officials from the party of Senegal's former president have accused Dakar of trying to stop Abdoulaye Wade's return by refusing his plane landing rights. It comes 2 years after his electoral defeat and soon after his son Karim was charged with corruption in Dakar. Wade's aircraft is reportedly now stuck in Morocco. His supporters say it's a ploy by the current government ahead of upcoming local elections.
The government spread rumours on the radio that after President Wade arrived in Casablanca, he felt ill and returned to Paris. Obviously, it's totally false. They are trying to sabotage his return. They just want him to arrive late at night. His rallies are banned. They even wanted to close the airport, but they saw that there was a huge crowd there, waiting to greet him.
South Sudan's dismissed its army chief. No official reason's been given, but it comes amidst recent setbacks in the military struggle against rebel forces led by former President Riek Machar. Violence has spiralled since fighting first broke out in December. More than 1 million people have been forced from their homes since then. Officials say that Muslim fighters have taken control of the northern town of Buka in Central African Republic. Sectarian violence has exploded in the country following a short-lived rebel takeover last year. Christian militia have been targeting Muslim civilians, and as aid workers try and move vulnerable communities to safety, the government's expressed concern that relocation goes against reconciliation efforts.
Protected closely by French soldiers, a convoy of 93 Muslims, including 35 children, left the PK-12 enclave over the past weekend. They were headed for Bambari, some 400 kilometers northeast of the capital, Bangui. Their being relocated has brought heated discussion among officials in the capital. The Minister of National Reconciliation said she was not informed of the operation.
For me, displacing people because they are Muslims is proof that we have failed. The relocation of these people was not carried out in coordination with the question of reconciliation.
Officials from the Red Cross and the International Organization of Migrations went to the ministry to explain the choice they made. In the presence of journalists, they made their position clear.
If it is necessary in order to save lives, we save lives, but we will work with the government.
But the minister says that the decision goes beyond the humanitarian issue because it raises questions about the future of the country.
If we relocate people to other regions, it's very dangerous. People should be left together.
Lack of safety is still the greatest obstacle towards returning to normal life in many districts. However, for the moment, the relocating of people has been suspended.
Now, it was once one of Africa's most sought-after holiday spots, but in recent years, Kenya's reputation as a tourist destination has taken a tumble. It's largely been due to security concerns following militant attacks. Nairobi, though, is trying to clean up the country's image.
The white sands of Mombasa still draw many Kenyans to come here to relax. But international tourists are increasingly rare. Kenya's image abroad has deteriorated in recent years, largely due to security fears.
There were 2 tourists who were taken from Lamu. They were taken to Somalia. So all the people thought that once you go to Kenya, then it's not a safe place to go.
Tourist numbers fell by a third after deadly post-election violence between 2007 and 2008. Then came last year's attack on the Westgate shopping mall, which left nearly 70 people dead. Kenya's president said that and other attacks by Al-Shabaab militants have brought the tourism sector to its knees. Tourism is Kenya's second biggest source of income. Tour companies say the government isn't doing enough to support the crucial industry.
We have had new taxation implemented. We saw a rise in park fees and all these factors that in a very dicey economic environment worldwide.
Kenya also faces fierce competition from neighbouring countries like Tanzania, where travellers can go from safari to the beach, often at a much lower cost. The Kenyan government's aiming to attract more than 1 million visitors a year from countries like China. That's up from the current figure of just 41,000 visitors per year.
That wraps up African News for me. I'll be back with more in about 45 minutes. Join us then if you can. Take care.